Studio 550, this is the board meeting on KTRS.
Normally, the board meeting is on Thursday, but however, one of our regulars was busy vetoing and overriding many bills that the governor had signed. He, of course, is John Deal, soon-to-be Speaker of the House. Good morning, John Deal.
Hey, good morning. Although it's the other way around. We were overriding bills that the governor didn't sign.
Oh. I thought
Governor vetoes, we override the veto.
All right, we'll get to that in a second. Civics. Jane Duker is here with us. She, of course...
Hashtag civics.
Hashtag civics.
You want to try this again? All right.
Sorry.
Jane Duker is here. Gadfly, former Chief of Staff to Governor Holden. Good morning, Jane Duker.
Good morning.
And Tony Messenger is out working very hard. Could not make it. Could not be pulled away from the salt mines today from the Post-Dispatch. So attorney, filmmaker, and former politician Jay Kanzler is joining us. Jay, good morning.
Good morning, all.
All right. So, John Deal, we'll start with you. The veto session is over with.
It is.
Governor Nixon did not sign the bills. He vetoed the bills, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yes.
So during the regular session, if a bill passes the House and the Senate,
right,
the governor has 45 days with which to sign the bill.
Right. If he doesn't do anything, the bill becomes a law. It's like he signed it, right?
Correct. That's correct.
Or he signs it, or he vetoes it, then goes back to you guys. You have to pass it 2/3 majority in both the House and the Senate.
That is correct.
Okay.
So,
and how many bills did you reach the 2/3 majority to overrule his veto?
well, we're still in the process of counting them all up, but
you want a calculator?
in the House, we overrode the governor about 70 times, and I believe we made 73 attempts. So that's a pretty good batting average. On the Senate, I believe they overrode him about as many times, but some bills cross chambers. I think the total number is going to be somewhere in the 50 to 60 range in terms of budget line items and bills that were overridden.
Right,
Most
the number
of those,
was very high was because they were
68
line
to
item
7.
budget.
Right, they're mostly line item budget issues, right?
Well, also a close to a record number of substantive vetoes also. We have to keep in mind is that up until last veto session, there have only been something like a little over a dozen, about 14 to 16 bills the governors have been overridden on in the history of the entire state.
Yeah.
Up until
We only had 2.
last September.
So you're telling me that up until last September, there's only been 16?
About 16 bills.
That the legislature overrode the veto of the governor?
In the history of the state.
Correct.
And this week there were 70?
Pretty close to 70.
Right.
Last year, there were about 15 or 16.
Sounds like a Rams score, doesn't it?
Right, really. Well, yeah,
Especially
they're on the
in
bad end
second
of it.
half,
That's right.
It was kind of funny because, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we talked that, here we are, we're at about 40, so it's halftime. We need to take about 15-minute break.
Does the governor talk to you at all during this?
No,
Is
he
he
does.
trying to twist arms with the Democrats, or not that he needs Democrats
no,
because
he
you don't need
actually
Democrats?
did. The morning before, and this is probably the first time he's talked to them in a while also, he had a big caucus meeting with the Democrats
Right.
down in the House basement, trying to rally them to stick with them. And it was pretty interesting because we walked by because we caucused at the same time. I think there were more security and entourage of the governor standing outside the room than there were actually Democrats inside the room listening to him.
Right.
And what was really interesting, I think, too, on this is the number, this wasn't Republicans versus the governor yesterday. These votes were all bipartisan. Every single veto override we did had supports of Democrats, sometimes to the tune of 130 total members, where over half the Democratic caucus would come vote with us on bills. I mean, it really was quite astounding on the day that what a poor day the governor had.
Jane Duker, why did so many Democrats leave the governor?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, most of the vetoes you're talking about were, single line item budget items, and the governor, has been very clear that because of the tax breaks that they, that the Republicans over his veto instituted, that the state just doesn't have enough money Okay, and so his view is these are not programs that everybody loves to give away money. I mean, I love that the Republicans are touting that they were spending like drunken sailors, because it does sort of turn the whole Democrat-Republican thing on its head. But so I think the reason why they got Democrats is because Democrats didn't want to be against programs that they know are good programs, but we just don't have the money for them. I mean, so when you look at the 44 to whatever 50 million of budget items that they overruled, I mean, it was, it pales in comparison to all the vetoes and all the withholds that the governor has to do to balance the budget. And so the argument is between balancing the budget and not balancing the budget. They're going to say there's enough revenue. The governor's going to say there's not enough revenue. And so, but the governor's the one who has to pay the bills. So he's the one that has to be conservative and say, look, I'm not going to, authorize a bunch of spending of money that if I'm not positive we don't have it, because he's the one that has to deal with it. So, it is easier on the legislative side. And that happened during the Holden administration. It's not new behavior. They spend, force the governor to cut. He's the bad guy.
I want to get to Jay, but our friend John Deal is chomping at the bit.
Oh, he can't even breathe.
Absolutely. I mean, those are the clever Nixon talking
They didn't get
points
their
on
big.
this.
They didn't get their big Friday giveaway, which was hundreds of millions of dollars. So if you look in the terms of money, the governor actually did better.
The governor had a horrible day, and what the governor does, and this is what the reaction was against the General Assembly on both sides, is that what bureaucrats like that do is they make any cuts that have to be the most painful and don't look at what really needs to be cut. And one thing we talked about extensively on the House floor on both sides of the aisle are the excesses and wasteful spending of this administration. We had a stack that was literally 2 feet high of out-of-state. We're not talking the state airplane here. We're talking out-of-state conventions, fees, meals, advertising, so forth and so on, that totaled about $100 million. Okay? The governor doesn't go and tell his staff they can't go to San Diego State University for conferences.
Right.
Okay? But we have to cut rape kits for child sexual abuse cases. Okay? Those are the types of things he vetoed instead of going after the true fat in government, and that's the kind of stuff that we're going to put a stop to.
Well, the legislature, I mean, they just
hold on a second. Well, what were the two or three bills you didn't get overridden? What were those two or three bills?
There were other bills that didn't get overridden, but we didn't try either.
Because you ran out of time?
Yeah, you only have so much time.
Only
so
24
hours in a day.
And we do have the votes for them. And I think what didn't get overridden, you're going to see brought back in January. They're going to be, Bob Dixon in the Senate, who's a sponsor of a couple of those bills, we're going to bring them back in January, and we're going to pass them early in January and stick them right back on his desk. You only have so much time. I think we were there till 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And so doing it. So, yeah, when you do that much, you have to pick and choose.
Let me bring in Jay on this, and you guys can sort of finish the segment with this. It seems to me, as an outsider looking in, it seems like the Democrats, and this, is it safe to say that Ferguson was in the background of all this, and his ill will because of Ferguson hurt him on the Democratic side of the aisle, and so now he's lost Democratic support down there?
Well, I do think that you did see some major frustration from the Black Caucus with the governor. Senator Maria Chappelle-Nadal, had some very, very pointed words toward the governor. She was very angry, and they had brought a lot of people from Ferguson there, in order to sort of show support for her and for what she's, fighting for her community. And so I do think that did play somewhat of a role. But again, I think these were programs that Democrats don't want to be on record as saying they don't think are good programs.
Right.
But they don't, the key is whether you have the money or not. And so the frustration was there. You could cut the tension with a knife when she was speaking.
Jay, you're involved with the Ferguson thing. You're watching all this from the sort of your position. What do you think happened down there?
Well, the governor is disengaged with the people. He was disengaged with what was going on in Ferguson. He's disengaged with what's going on in Jefferson City. You cannot be engaged if you don't meet, if you don't listen, if you don't get together and work. I don't know which of his spokespersons said this. The governor wouldn't speak about the veto session, but the spokesperson said that the governor will continue to work on priorities that move the state forward. Well, you know what? the legislature was continuing to work on priorities to move the state forward, because that's why they all passed them. It's the governor that doesn't get what's going on, and in large part because he's sitting in an airplane going around holding press conferences.
John Deal, final thought. Has the Democratic Party left Governor Nixon?
Well, I think at least for now, the Black Caucus has, and I think for now, some of the outstate some of the outstate Democrats have also. There's a few left, but getting back to like the airplane, what Jay was saying, there's a really good quote in the Post-Dispatch this morning from a political science professor down in Springfield, and his comment was that the airplane has become a metaphor, and of what is wrong with Jay Nixon. Like just today he's spending about anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 of state money to fly to Springfield and Kansas City to talk about the importance of education funding, yet he can't walk up one flight of steps and take 72 steps to the door of the Speaker's office or the floor leader's office to talk about how those priorities are important in the General Assembly.
Yeah, Jane?
Well, no, I mean, I think this idea, first of all, like banging on the governor about the plane, that's nothing new. We got the same thing. I think it would be ridiculous to think that the governor should not be able and should fly all over the state.
But hold on a second. But his point is that, okay, the cost isn't the issue, but the issue is he's flying to Kansas City when he could have been engaged with the people right across the street to help him.
No, they're in
get
the
the
same
same
building.
building.
No, they're in the same building. But, because why? Because the Republican legislature is treating him so well and working with him. I mean, I understand that maybe, communication isn't his, complete forte, but make no mistake, it's not like this is going to be kumbaya, and if he walks upstairs, the Republicans are going to say, wow, let's do everything together.
You will not begin to work together if you're not willing to sit down and talk. And just so long as as the separation is there, the situation will remain the same. And that's the same problem with race relations. It's the same problem in Jefferson City. You can't have a conversation if you're not at the table.
We are willing to talk, and every single governor up to this one has walked over and talked to the General Assembly. This one refuses to do it.
That's John Deal, soon-to-be Speaker of the House, Majority Leader, Jay Kanzler, filmmaker, attorney, and reformed politician, I should say.
Yes.
And former Chief of Staff to Governor Holden, Jane Duker. The board meeting continues on the Big 550 KTRS.